Welcome back to the studio. If you're new, I'm SLEW. I love to oil paint crazy things, wacky, fantastical characters, self-portraits, but something to help me improve and also have fun and exercise is doing master copies. I'm copying old masters' paintings to see how they did things, imitate techniques, whatever. I've done a lot in the past on the channel. I'll link a bunch of them in the description below. And I recently did a study of Joaquin Sorolla's El Pescador. Amazing portrait. I mean, Joaquin Sorolla. Sorolla is so famous, one of the top tier masters that a lot of people like, me included. But this painting I saw, reference for me, I just like to do portraiture, what I work on, and it was just awesome. And so I was live streaming it a few weeks ago. Really simple, really small study in my sketchbook. I think it was like 2 hours total. Check out my Patreon. We have an awesome Discord and I live paint over there. But I enjoyed it so much, the painting, the brush strokes, the composition, the overall dark portrait with intense light. I enjoyed it so much that I want to do it again, and I want to spend more time on it. I want to do it bigger, just a teeny bit bigger. And so that's what we're doing today. But first we got to talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is Skillshare, an online learning community with thousands of different classes ranging from all sorts of creative genres. All these classes are taught by the leading professionals in each of these disciplines. It's really an amazing place to get your foot in the door for a new creative hobby, or even for people who are industry professionals and looking to learn new skills within their profession. There's classes ranging for every type of person. I've been using Skillshare for the dawn of all my YouTube endeavors, learn how to video edit, photo edit, and also to use apps on the iPad. There's a great class taught by Jerome Vogel, Learn to use Procreate, one of the most powerful apps on the iPad for fine artists like myself. I use that application literally every week. Skillshare is just, top quality. Their user interface, the discussion boards, the class assignments, the curriculum for each individual class. It's really just built to learn. Skillshare is really amazing. They've been sponsoring and supporting my channel for years. I've also have used them for over 4 years, so it's really wonderful. They're giving you a great deal. 1 free month of Skillshare if you click the link in the description. The first 1,000 people, do not sleep. Go check it out and learn something new. Another reason besides me loving the portrait by Sorolla to do another copy was actually because I thought that little study wasn't super successful. It's such a challenging portrait. Every master copy is challenging. Obviously, trying to replicate someone's masterful work is no small feat, but this in particular, like the amount of brush strokes, the nuance of brush strokes, and the nuance of value. Like, I think the likeness was fine in my original 2-hour study, right? Like, it was a very, very simple little exercise, but what kind of like skewed me and was bugging me was kind of my values. It's actually a very dark portrait, and that's something that kind of separates super masterful people, especially, anyways, that's just a style of painting, like very dark. And so like the midtones in this portrait are like very dark, and there's like crazy highlights that I obviously overdo per usual, but just the nuance in that I think is more important than the likeness. So this sketch that I put up, I didn't even film it. I spent a good amount of time trying to get that so that I can really just focus on the paint and the color mixing with my Zorn palette over there. If you didn't know, those 4 colors, titanium white, yellow ochre, cadmium red light, and ivory black. I'm assuming that, these old masters sort of used a limited palette, like the Zorn palette. So that's what we're using. It's also nice to keep sort of a harmonious color scheme, but I just am fascinated with how talented some people are, and like even laying this all out and taking my time. It is so hard to get a likeness in terms of like a similar paint style, and like maybe Sorolla's approach to the portrait, his portrait originally was like super alla prima and way different than I'm kind of doing it. I'm sort of just blocking in little tiles of value, and then I'm going to go over a little more. But I mean, I was kind of like feeling myself in these beginning stages, and then towards the end, consistently just looking on my monitor at this amazing painting. It's like, oh my gosh, like how does someone become that good? And And that's just the world, you know, that's what separates, you know, really amazing painters, professionals, and, you know, sort of timeless legacy painters that are known as masters. But we're just chugging along. And the reason why I love this, again, for the darkness, like I really, really think I paint too light sometimes. And if I could just like turn a knob on my, you know, creative practice or my fine art practice in oil to just, you know, darken everything by like a whole value, or, you know, in photography, you know, a whole stop of light, that would be awesome. And so this painting is really a masterclass in sort of this mega dark, you know, most of his face is in darkness. The background's actually quite dark. And there's some insane nuance with, you know, the spotlight on his forehead, and also the light to the left of his ear in the background. And I also just love the atmosphere that, you know, this painting has. It's almost like he's coming through the painting. You could physically feel the head coming through some sort of space, which is another insane skill that people have with representing reality or representing depth and form in paintings on a flat surface, is this idea of depth and this idea of atmosphere, which I don't, you know, I'm just saying these words doesn't really mean much, but I'm trying to replicate that, and it's quite challenging. But, you know, I'm happy with where I am right now. I think we've done about 2.5 hours of this sort of first stage, and I'm just taking this dry sable brush to kind of like, you know, smooth some things out. I like to do this just to, you know, remember where I am and not to get too detailed. Okay, just wanted to give you a little view update of what's going down. Also just show you, oh, we're very exposed, of the painting studio and just like the area and the feng shui. This is kind of like my happy place. You know, when I don't have any other work or dealing with emails or editing videos or a million other logistical things, I could just sit here. I got my monitor with the reference, the painting, and I got a wonderful podcast with a lemon water. This is your mom's house. Love it. So this is just super wonderful. We are at a really good stage with the painting, actually, where I've kind of stopped, taken a break, and also cleaned the palette, which means it's kind of on to the final phase of adding lights and chiseling out more shadow shapes. And I mean, as I stare at this more and try to replicate it, it's just like, how can anyone be that talented? It's just so impressive, and I can't get enough, but I'm having a blast, and we're just gonna keep on trudging along, and I think it's turned out great. Like, I'm really happy with this area right here, even though this is sort of like a nebulous muck. Like, this is obviously a study for Soroya, an unfinished sort of just idea, but the painterly elements of it I am trying to grasp. And that's really it. So that's the update. And another thing that is interesting is trying to paint, you know, a human face from live reference or even a photograph, and then trying to paint another person's painting. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm copying the painting. I'm not even copying the face. I'm copying the strokes and, you know, the opaqueness of paint and paint application. So it's a weird kind of like process and exercise. I think it's super helpful. And even though I think this study comes out not mega successful, and I'm pleased because it's fun and I did it and it came out, but like I wish it was way closer. Anywho, it's an interesting sort of exercise to try to copy paint strokes and instead of just copying a face and trying to put a face down, because yes, that's what I'm doing. It's what you're seeing in this kind of prolonged time lapse, but you know, in the moment, I'm not even looking at the general form. I'm looking at the individual page strokes, and because I had that outline, you know, it's just a different, I think, again, exercise of observation, and perhaps also not the best. You know, I'm just ranting right now and contradicting myself, but I think something that I did the most successful was under the chin, sort of like the neck or shoulder, or what is that called? A deltoid, or no, I don't know my anatomy, but his trap leading into the distance. I think that's really cool. Also the neck or the trap and the shawl closest to us. You know, that is like a really sort of awesome spot, and I liked it a lot. And back and forth throughout the portrait, I was like, oh, the face is great. You know, I felt that about the face. And I was like, oh, you know, I used too much darkness there, or my, you know, light and dark are too far apart. Like right here, I'm using this pink. Looking back, I know that this is just way too bright. Whereas the, you know, original portrait is so subtle and so beautifully crafted with subtle values. It's so challenging. Like, and I think I'm like, oh, I'm gonna nail this. Like, I have all this time, and it is just insanely difficult, and it's just another testament to the feat of some of these painters. But it's like a good, I don't want to say humbling, because I'm not trying to come close to compare myself obviously to a master painter, but you know, just it's a good reminder of like the scope of understanding with paint that some people have and that you can achieve. So here's the comparison, and you could see that it's like, it's not great. And like maybe during that time lapse, even me watching this over right now, I'm like, oh, it's pretty solid, you know, but then you just boom, look at that professional face. That the face just looks so natural, but also stylized, chunky paint strokes. If I pan up, like that doesn't look too bad, you know, again, this is just like a 5-hour study, but you go to that and you're just like, my gosh, masterful. It's really the only word that comes to my mind. Again, super fun, and I hopefully learned something, and this was hopefully entertaining. And I would highly suggest people try it out also. It's kind of what got me into oil painting, actually, is just continuing practicing and mimicking other painters. But yeah, that's all for me. I think that, you know, again, this was worth the time, and I try to do one of these a month, and that's all I'm gonna really say about that. You know, they're not super serious, and it's not like I'm in my own school. It's just something I like to continue and keep within my oil painting practice. So that's it. See you guys in the next video.